On a crowded train, packed with silent, watching adults, it was a small boy, not even 6 years old, who dropped everything to help a stranger. When a white woman suddenly collapsed, gasping for air, nobody moved. Except him. He reached out with small hands, unaware of how big his gesture would become. But what happened next stunned the entire car, especially when her husband arrived and saw who had saved her. This is the story of an innocent heart, buried prejudice, and a train that stopped for more than just a red signal. Location: Brooklyn local train. Time: 5:34 p.m. Tuesday. The train rocked slightly as it sped through the underground tunnel, the hum of metallic wheels echoing beneath fluorescent lights. The car was filled with early risers, briefcases clutched between knees, earbuds nestled deep, coffee cups balanced with practiced precision. No one spoke. No one made eye contact. Everyone was somewhere else, in mind if not in body. Then came a sound, a soft thud. A purse slipped, a shoe twisted, a body slumped sideways onto the floor. Heads turned halfway. Eyes flicked over phones, but no one rose. A woman, white, mid-30s, dressed in a navy suit and tan heels, was gasping. Her hand reached out, fingers curled weakly. Her eyes rolled upward. She was trying to speak, but no sound came. Silence followed. No one moved. Then came a different sound. Polished black shoes, small, careful, tapping across the metal floor. A tiny boy, no more than 5, walked forward. He wore a pressed shirt, clip-on tie, and sweater vest. His backpack bobbed behind him as he stepped around frozen knees and startled glances. He knelt beside her. "Ma'am," he whispered, "are you okay?" His voice was soft but sure. He reached out and laid his hand gently over hers. She blinked. A man finally rose. Then another. Someone pressed the emergency call button. The train began to slow. But it was the boy who moved first, while others debated, while others watched, while others waited. What makes a 5-year-old move when no adult does? Was it instinct? Was it kindness? Was it a lesson learned early, or something he was born knowing? Marcus, age 6, lived in a small third-floor apartment with his mother and grandmother. The building creaked when the wind hit it just right, and the elevator never worked, but it was home. The walls were lined with family photos, school drawings, and handwritten notes reminding him to brush his teeth or feed the fish. His mother, Camille, was a nurse. She worked nights at the hospital and still managed to braid his hair in the morning before school. She had a quiet strength about her, stern when needed, but always loving. Camille taught Marcus how to pack his lunch, sort laundry, and hold the door open for neighbors. His grandmother, Miss Lila, was the one who got him up when it was still dark. She made oatmeal and talked to him, while the news played low on the kitchen TV. She called him baby, no matter how tall he got, and reminded him that kindness was not something you learned from books. It was something you did. Marcus grew up watching these two women navigate the world with grace, even when it was unfair. Camille faced exhaustion and bias at work, but she came home with her head held high. Miss Lila made sure every kid in the building had warm mittens each winter, even if it meant knitting until her hands ached. From them, Marcus learned what it meant to look out for others. He learned that listening was powerful, and that being small did not mean being powerless. He learned to hold his chin up when adults ignored him, and to smile at the people who looked uncomfortable when he entered a room. They never told him the world was easy, but they taught him how to walk through it with purpose. Camille always said if someone needs help, you help. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter who's watching. Marcus took that seriously. He was the kind of kid who checked if a classmate got picked last in gym, the kind who offered his last fruit snack to a crying peer. He noticed things. He paid attention. In his Spider-Man backpack, he carried small toys, a library card, and a zippered pouch of Band-Aids, just in case. He kept them with him like a tiny toolkit for kindness. Miss Lila once laughed and called it his hero kit. Even at 6, Marcus understood the weight of responsibility, not because it was forced on him, but because it was modeled every day in the way his mother and grandmother moved through the world. He saw how hard they worked. He saw how often they were overlooked. He saw how quick people were to assume the worst, especially if your skin was brown and your clothes came from the thrift store. But he also saw love, real, active, resilient love. That love became his compass. He knew how to be careful in stores. He knew to speak clearly and keep his hands out of his pockets when asking for help. He knew not everyone would smile back, but he also knew that kindness had power, and that sometimes it was the only thing standing between someone and despair. Marcus did not grow up with much, but he was rich in examples. His mother's calm in the face of chaos, his grandmother's wisdom wrapped in warmth. Together, they raised a boy who believed that care was not optional. It was essential. He may have been small, but he knew how to show up. And when the moment came, when someone needed him most, he would be ready, not because he had been told what to do, but because he had already lived it. The train car rumbled through the tunnel, its overhead lights flickering slightly with each turn. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the occasional hum of headphones, the hiss of brakes, or the muted sound of someone clearing their throat. The woman near the center pole shifted her weight, blinking slowly. Her hands trembled around a half-empty coffee cup. She gripped the metal bar one last time, and then her hand slipped. Her eyes fluttered. Her knees buckled. A quiet moan escaped her lips. She dropped hard. The metal floor echoed as her body struck it. Her head hit with a sickening sound. The coffee cup rolled away, spilling its last drops under the seats. A stunned silence swept through the train. Some passengers looked up, then just as quickly looked back down. A man 2 seats away glanced briefly before adjusting his headphones. 2 teenage boys sitting near the door laughed nervously and moved to the far end of the car. One of them muttered something under his breath. The other snickered. A man in a leather jacket shook his head. "Bet she's overdosed," he said, not quietly. No one went near her, except Marcus. He had seen her fingers twitch. He had seen her mouth opening as if she was trying to speak but could not. He stood up quickly, tugging his aunt's hand. "She's in trouble," he said, eyes wide. His aunt looked but did not move. Her hand froze in his. Her breath caught. The moment stretched. The train rocked again. So Marcus slipped away. He stepped around the puddle of coffee and the scattered purse contents. His small shoes tapped carefully on the floor. He knelt beside the woman whose body had curled slightly with the fall. "I think you're sick," he whispered. "I'll stay with you." His voice was soft, but it cut through the silence more than any alarm. He reached for her hand and held it with both of his. She blinked again, barely. Her breathing was shallow. Marcus sat beside her, eyes wide, heart racing. Behind him, passengers began to stir. Someone pressed the emergency button. A woman stood and called out, "We need help down here." Another man came forward with his phone, dialing 911, but none of them were first. None of them moved when it mattered most. It was Marcus, 6 years old, no taller than the subway seats, who reminded everyone that help is not a performance. It is an instinct, and it is most powerful when it comes without hesitation. Why is the instinct to help replaced by judgment in adults, but not in children? That question hung in the air as the train slowed, as responders arrived, and as people finally turned toward the boy in the blue shirt kneeling beside a stranger. The train had slowed, but had not yet stopped. A woman lay unconscious on the floor, her breathing shallow, her body limp. Next to her, a boy no taller than her shoulder knelt with both hands wrapped around hers. Marcus stayed still, his voice low, repeating, "It's okay. I'm here. Help is coming." But around him, concern was not the dominant reaction. Across the aisle, a white woman clutched her purse tighter and whispered, "Why is he touching her?" A man with a briefcase stood and barked loudly, "Someone get him away from her before she wakes up and sues." Another voice, barely louder than the train's rumble, muttered, "If he did something to her, this'll get ugly fast." The comments were not spoken in fear. They were soaked in judgment. As if Marcus, 6 years old, hands shaking, heart pounding, was the problem. He heard them. Not all the words, but the tone. The way their voices bent. The way their eyes cut sideways. He looked around, confused. "Why is everyone scared?" he whispered to no one in particular. No one answered. He turned his focus back to the woman. Her skin looked pale. Her lips had begun to shift to a bluish tint. He remembered what his mother told him about breathing, about what to watch for. He placed his fingers gently on her wrist again, checking for a pulse the way his mom showed him once after a long night shift. Across the car, no adult moved. One passenger leaned back, folded arms, and muttered, "This isn't our business." That seemed to be the shared consensus. Eyes were glued to Marcus, not with concern for the woman, but with growing suspicion toward the child. Not one person knelt beside him. Not one voice said, "He's trying to help." Instead, the air thickened with something else. Bias. The kind that works quietly, sliding between fear and assumption. The kind that does not see a boy in a vest and tie, only the color of his skin, only a narrative they already believed. Marcus did not know words like profiling. He did not know what it meant to be watched as a threat instead of a comfort. But in that moment, he felt it. He saw the way adults flinched when he moved. He noticed how no one seemed to see the woman anymore, just him near her. The energy had shifted. The emergency call had already been made, but time moved slowly. Seconds felt stretched. And the silence from the rest of the car grew louder than any siren. Marcus looked up at the closest adult, a tall man who stood stiffly with his phone halfway raised. "Can you help her?" he asked, voice small. The man did not respond. He just shook his head and stepped back. Behind him, a teenage girl looked away, staring at the ground. Apathy and bias, hand in hand, filled the space where help should have been. Still, Marcus stayed. He did not cry. He did not panic. He held the woman's hand tighter and whispered again, "You're going to be okay." When race dictates perception, a helper becomes a threat. But Marcus had never been taught to see people that way. He only saw someone in need. And even in a room full of silence, he chose to stay human. Marcus shifted his weight and reached into his pocket. His fingers found the soft square of cloth his grandmother had tucked there that morning. "Always carry a clean handkerchief," she had said. "You never know when someone might need it." He pulled it out and gently dabbed the woman's forehead, careful not to push too hard. Her skin felt cold and damp. Her hair stuck to her face. The cloth trembled slightly in his hand, but his grip stayed steady. She twitched. Her breathing, already shallow, hitched once, and then stopped. "Please wake up," Marcus whispered. He squeezed her hand with both of his. "You're not alone. I'm here." Someone behind him shouted, "Don't touch her again." Marcus froze. His eyes widened. The train doors opened at the next station. A burst of cold air rushed in. Uniformed EMTs and a conductor stormed the car, eyes scanning the scene. People pointed. The noise rose. "There she is," someone called out. Marcus stepped back slightly, but kept his eyes on the woman. The EMTs dropped to their knees. One of them immediately began checking her pulse. Another tilted her head, cleared her airway, and placed an oxygen mask over her mouth. The conductor looked around. Who was with her? Passengers looked at each other. Then someone gestured. That boy. He was the only one helping. The conductor nodded. He's the one who stayed beside her. An officer near the train doors glanced up from a notepad. "Seriously?" he asked, eyebrows raised. One EMT paused in his work and looked over at Marcus. "You were with her?" Marcus nodded slowly. "She fell. I didn't know what to do. I just stayed." The EMT gave a short nod and returned to his task. Another adjusted the oxygen tank. A third unzipped the stretcher. Marcus watched as they lifted her body onto it. She was breathing again, though her eyes remained closed. One of the EMTs whispered to another, "She's stable, barely, but she made it." Marcus stayed silent beside the stretcher. His small hands at his sides clenched tight. He was not sure if what he had done was right. He was not sure if he had broken a rule. All he knew was she had needed someone. Behind him, the whispers returned. Some voices soft, some skeptical, most stunned. "He helped her." "That kid," one passenger muttered. "I thought for sure he was part of the problem." But Marcus did not hear them. His eyes stayed on the woman. A medic paused before exiting the train. She turned back to Marcus. "You did the right thing," she said gently. Marcus looked up. "Even though I touched her?" "Especially because you did," she replied. The doors slid shut behind them. Marcus stood for a moment longer, unsure if he could return to his seat. He glanced around. No one met his eyes. A few lowered their heads. One or two looked away entirely. His aunt finally stepped forward and knelt beside him. "You okay, baby?" she asked, brushing dust from his knee. He nodded. She placed her hand on his back and led him gently to a seat. Why do heroism and innocence have to be defended by evidence? Why does a boy helping someone become something that must be proven? Marcus had no answers, just a clean handkerchief, and the memory of a hand he refused to let go. The hospital waiting room buzzed with soft footsteps and quiet voices. Nurses moved quickly but calmly. Phones rang behind glass desks, and the smell of antiseptic filled the air. Marcus sat in a chair outside the ER, feet barely touching the floor. His aunt was beside him, her arm around his shoulders, her other hand gently rubbing his back. A security guard stood near the entrance. The EMT who had spoken to Marcus earlier leaned against the wall, sipping from a paper cup. Then the doors burst open. A tall man in a wrinkled suit rushed inside. Ty Askew, panic written all over his face. His voice cracked with urgency. "My wife. Where is she? What room?" The security guard stepped forward, steady and calm. "Sir, please." But the EMT set down his cup and approached quickly. "She's stable," he said. "She's being monitored. Oxygen is helping." The man's breath caught. "She's alive?" The EMT nodded. "Yes, sir. Your wife passed out on the train, but she's okay now." The husband's knees nearly gave out. He gripped the counter to steady himself. "Who found her?" The EMT turned his head. "That boy over there." The man followed the EMT's eyes and saw Marcus, a little black boy, 6 years old, sitting still and quiet, his hands folded in his lap. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, his eyes wide with exhaustion. "Him?" the man asked aloud, surprised. "Yes, sir," the EMT said firmly. "He was the only one helping her when we arrived. He stayed beside her the whole time, tried to keep her calm. He never moved." The husband's expression shifted, confusion still lingering behind his eyes. He stepped closer, slowly. Marcus stood up politely. He looked up at the man, unsure whether to speak. The husband knelt to Marcus's eye level. His eyes were glassy, overwhelmed, but his voice was soft. "You didn't know her," he said. "Why did you stay?" Marcus blinked. He shrugged slightly. "She was scared. I'd want someone to stay with my mom." The man's face softened. The tension in his shoulders dropped. He placed a hand over Marcus's. "Thank you," he said hoarsely. "Thank you for not leaving her." Marcus nodded. He did not know what else to say. He did not need to say more. The man stood slowly and turned to the EMT. "Can he come see her?" "Maybe later," the EMT said. "Let her rest first, but I'll tell her." The husband turned back to Marcus one more time. "You saved her. No one else moved. But you did." Marcus sat back down. His aunt gave his hand a gentle squeeze. He exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Sometimes kindness shatters stereotypes in a single sentence, and sometimes the smallest act becomes the loudest truth. Stay with us as we explore what the city saw next, when one boy's action moved far beyond the train. Subscribe to continue the story. The hospital room was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of afternoon light. Machines beeped gently beside the bed. The woman stirred, her fingers twitching beneath the blanket. Her eyes fluttered open, and her breath caught as the ceiling came into view. A nurse leaned over with a gentle smile. "You're okay," she said softly. "You're at County Medical. You passed out on the train, but you're safe now." The woman's voice cracked as she whispered, "Where's the little boy?" The nurse blinked. "Still here," she said. "He's in the waiting room. Wanted to make sure you were okay before he left." Tears spilled instantly from the woman's eyes. "Tell him," she said through sobs. "Tell him I know he saved me." The nurse nodded and quietly stepped out of the room. Marcus sat in a chair down the hall, legs dangling, hands folded in his lap. When the nurse entered, he looked up. "She asked for you," the nurse said. "First thing she said, she knows what you did." Marcus nodded, unsure how to respond. His aunt placed her hand on his back and smiled. Photos from the scene had already begun to spread online. A passenger from the train had taken a snapshot. A boy in a blue shirt kneeling beside a woman on the floor. The image was blurry but powerful. By nightfall, it was everywhere. Headlines flashed. "Boy, 6, helps woman on subway while adults watch. Child acts as only responder in train emergency." Meet the boy who reminded us what compassion looks like. The praise was loud, but so were the questions. Was it staged? Where were the adults? Why was he even on that train alone? People dissected the story. Some tried to turn it into politics, others into cautionary tales. But the truth was simple. A boy had helped when no one else did. One news anchor, frustrated by the noise, broke from script. "Maybe the question is not about where he was," she said. "Maybe it's about where we were, all of us. In that moment, on that train, in this city. Why did a child have to remind us how to be human?" The clip of her statement went viral. The narrative began to shift. More voices emerged. A woman posted, That boy restored something I thought I lost. A teacher wrote, "I showed the photo to my class today. Not one of them asked if it was real. They just said he was brave." Marcus's school sent out a statement of pride. His teacher added a photo of him to the hallway display titled, "Everyday Leaders." Still, not everyone applauded. There were threads questioning the family, speculation about parenting, scrutiny of his clothing, his background, his community. But Marcus did not read the comments. He returned to his quiet life, surrounded by people who already knew his worth. He helped with dishes, played with his cousins, sat beside his grandmother as she watched the news. He did not ask to be a symbol. He just did what felt right. When the story becomes national, the real question is what took us so long to notice, because the truth was never hidden. It was kneeling quietly beside someone in need. And it was wearing a blue shirt. Marcus stood at the front of the school auditorium, small hands folded in front of him, eyes blinking under the stage lights. His classmates sat cross-legged on the gym floor. Teachers lined the back wall. Banners fluttered from the rafters. The principal stepped forward and adjusted the microphone. "Today, we honor someone who reminded us all what courage looks like," she said. A cheer rose from the students. Marcus looked down, smiling shyly. She reached into a box and pulled out a red and gold ribbon, pinned to a polished silver medallion. "The Courage Medal," she announced, presented to Marcus James for bravery, compassion, and quick action in a moment when many adults hesitated. His teacher knelt and placed the medal around his neck. The room erupted with applause. Marcus's mother wiped her eyes from her seat in the front row. She had taken off work for the day, wearing her best blouse. Her voice cracked later during an interview. "He's always been like this," she said. "He's not loud, he's not showy, but if someone's hurting, Marcus notices, and he moves." News crews gathered outside the school, snapping photos of the boy with the medal, the backpack, and the small, steady smile. Local businesses donated supplies to his school in his honor. A bookstore dropped off a shipment of children's novels. A nearby market delivered fruit and snacks for every classroom. But the most powerful moment came days later. The woman's husband, once shocked, once skeptical, stood at a news podium beside a photo of his wife and Marcus. He cleared his throat, his voice unsteady. "When I first saw him," he said, "I did not see a helper. I saw something shaped by my own fear." He paused. "He made me ashamed, not because he was a child, but because I wasn't." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I looked at him and questioned. He looked at my wife and helped. He went on to announce a new initiative, the Marcus James Emergency Response Fund. Its mission was simple: support training, education, and outreach in underserved communities so that every child, regardless of background, could learn how to respond in a crisis. The fund launched with an initial donation of $50,000. More poured in within days. Marcus, standing beside him, said only one thing when reporters turned. "I didn't save her for attention. I saved her because she needed help." He did not elaborate. He did not pose. He simply meant it, and people believed him. The image of Marcus kneeling beside a stranger now hung in the school office. A copy was framed at the hospital. Another, laminated and waterproof, was mounted inside the train car where it happened. Underneath it, the quote read, "I stayed because I hoped someone would do the same for my mom." Children who saw it asked more questions. Teachers paused longer during lessons. Police departments across the city began revisiting their training materials. When humility follows heroism, healing begins. Marcus returned to his daily life. Homework, cartoons, helping in the kitchen. But something had shifted, not just around him, but within the people who saw him clearly for the first time. They did not just see a boy. They saw what happens when care leads before fear. Marcus still rides that train, same time, same route, same stops. He wears the same shoes, carries the same backpack. But now, something has shifted. When he steps onto the platform, people smile. Some nod. Some whisper his name to one another. A few even say it out loud. That's him. That's Marcus. The conductor always gives him a fist bump as he boards. A silent thank you between grown man and small boy. No announcement, no ceremony, just quiet respect. Marcus walks through the train car like he always has, choosing a seat near the middle. He looks out the window. He hums softly to himself. He watches. Nothing about his posture says he is different. But everything about how people see him has changed. He is no longer invisible. He is a reminder. A new sign has been installed on the wall of the subway car where it all happened. Simple black letters on brushed steel. Sometimes heroes kneel, not to pray, but to save. Beneath it, a small blue handprint is painted on the floor. It sits exactly where Marcus knelt beside the woman that day. Kids press their palms to it as they pass. Adults step around it carefully, aware of its weight. It is not just paint. It is a promise, a reminder of what it means to stop, what it means to care. Marcus does not point it out. He does not trace the letters. He simply glances at it each time he boards, as if checking that it is still there, still real. His aunt says he still asks if the woman is okay. His mom says he still checks the news for any mention of others helping. He always wants to know what happened next, because Marcus never did it for the cameras or the headlines. He did it because it was right. And now, that rightness lives on in the city's memory, in the way passengers lift their heads when someone stumbles, in the way a child's hand is no longer doubted when it reaches out. The subway rides are still noisy, still crowded, still fast. But somewhere between the opening doors and the flickering lights, something else now moves through them. A story. A quiet voice that once whispered, "Are you okay?" And the answer that followed. If you believe kindness should always move faster than fear, share this story. Because even the smallest soul can make the biggest stop. Thank you for riding this journey with us. Subscribe for more stories that prove it does not take size to stand tall.